really changed their tune because they realized that shareholders were unhappy and were frustrated. And look at that stock chart. It really turned around. Now, all the integrated oils have come up, but look at Exxon relative to the others. And I think the fact that we were finally engaging with them and making some traction with management was waking the shareholders.
The following is a paid program. The opinions and views expressed do not reflect those of Bloomberg LP, its affiliates, or its employees.
Hi, I'm Jane King, and thank you for watching. This show is all about public, private, and blockchain companies. We bring you the innovators behind the companies making the headlines in that space. Some are sponsored, some are invited. All are curated and focused on telling you, the viewers, their story. Here we go. Tonix recently presented a scientific poster at the American Society of Clinical Psychopharmacology annual meeting, which detailed the positive results of a phase 3 study using TNX-102SL in fibromyalgia. And so with me is the CEO, Seth Lutterman, to talk more about this, what it means. So welcome back, Seth.
Thank you for having me back on.
Yeah. So let's start with just give me an overall of this clinical study that you did for the fibromyalgia treatment. Bring us up to date on that.
Well, it's a big win for fibromyalgia patients. We think that this clearly shows that our model of improving sleep quality can lead to an improvement in across the board in fibromyalgia. The primary endpoint of the study was pain, because fibromyalgia is considered a pain disorder. And in this study, it was a 14-week study, and people got either our drug, TNX-102SL, or placebo. And after 14 weeks, the treated people did better on pain than the placebo group. And that was statistically significant by the pre-specified primary analysis. So it was a positive phase 3 study. And since you need 2 phase 3 studies for FDA approval, we think we're halfway home.
Okay. How big of a problem is fibromyalgia in the U.S., globally?
Fibromyalgia affects about 10 million American adults. About half of them are diagnosed, and about 90% of the diagnosed people are treated. But still, there's a long way to go to get the other half of fibromyalgia patients into treatment, because there are some good treatments already available, and we think that ours will also be a very important addition to the treatment options.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that you've done 1/3 phase trial, and that was positive. So you do another one. How long do you think it might be before this gets FDA approval?
In the United States, you need 2 phase 3 studies for approval. So we've finished 1 phase 3 study. The second one, we're already enrolling. We expect to have interim analysis next quarter, so in Q3, which is just in a couple of weeks, Q3 starts. And then we've guided that we'll have top line on that study in the first quarter of 2022, so the first quarter of next year. Mm-hmm. So if that study's positive, we expect to be able to file the new drug application in 2022, and we expect to have FDA approval in 2023. Now, of course, that depends on the next study confirming the results of the study we just completed, but we're optimistic about that because the current phase 3 study is pretty much identical to the one we just completed that was successful. Now, the one difference is it's a larger study, but we made it larger to increase the chances that it would be successful.
Mm-hmm. Can you describe the treatment? Is it a pill? I mean, how does it work?
Yeah, thank you. It's a tablet that goes under the tongue, and it's taken every night at bedtime. So every night just before bedtime, the person takes the tablet, puts it under the tongue. Under the tongue, it rapidly disintegrates and then is absorbed into the bloodstream by the mucous membrane under the tongue. And what it does is it improves sleep quality. And we think that sleep quality is very different from quantity. So quality means how useful the sleep is from a health point of view. And quantity is just someone being knocked out, but not necessarily getting good sleep. So the sleep drugs that are approved in the United States today are focused on quantity, and they're called sedatives or hypnotics, whereas ours does not knock you out. Ours is designed to improve the quality. So while someone is sleeping, while someone with fibromyalgia is sleeping, processes in the brain can occur that lead to an overall improvement in their health.
Okay, interesting. So since this deals with sleep, will there be other indications for this treatment?
Excellent question. Yes, we think that poor sleep quality leads to problems in many different conditions. Now, each one of these different conditions has their own particular type of sleep problem. So we're going to have to test it in each one of these conditions before we know. But we do have active INDs, that means an investigational new drug application, in 3 other conditions already. And those are post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, agitation in Alzheimer's disease, which is a common but difficult problem, and alcoholism. The new name for alcoholism is called alcohol use disorder. So those are 3 conditions where scientists believe that poor sleep exacerbates, prolongs, or generally worsens these conditions. So we intend to try it in these 3 and also other diseases, because as you said, sleep is a component of many different conditions.
Sure is. So what are the key takeaways then of this program?
Well, the key takeaways are that there hasn't been a new fibromyalgia drug in over 10 years, and a lot has been learned about fibromyalgia in those 10 years. I think the big differentiator of our product, if approved, is that it targets sleep quality. And one of the things that's very unique about that is we can target sleep quality in fibromyalgia, improve the pain, and yet we are using a medicine that is recognized not to have addictive or dependency issues. So I think it's a different mechanism, completely different mechanism than the approved drugs and in fibromyalgia. And we think it's going to be a very important option for fibromyalgia patients.
Okay, very interesting. We'll come back when you start to get that second phase 3 trial going. And we'll see. We'll get an update.
Great. I look forward to it. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you. Seth Letterman of Tonix Pharmaceuticals. FINXFLO is creating a user-centric trading platform that provides both retail and institutional investors access to DeFi and CeFi products. So with me is the CEO and co-founder, James Gillingham. Welcome back, James.
Thank you, Jane.
Great to see you again. So so we talked DeFi and CeFi, centralized exchanges, which is basically what we're used to. But you're the world's first hybrid aggregator of this. Can you explain what that means?
Sure. So FINXFLO, we essentially aggregate both centralized and decentralized exchanges. So we've signed up and we have access to all of their APIs, and we essentially put them into one account, essentially one portal, which is FINXFLO. And by trading through FINXFLO, you're able to access all of those underlying CeFi and DeFi exchanges.
Okay. Now, what are some of the benefits in terms of offering both types of protocols?
So obviously, one of the benefits is that we have multiple traders. So instead of trading through one exchange itself, going through only one exchange, you only have access to the traders that are trading on that exchange. However, by us aggregating multiple exchanges, you have access to potentially millions of traders rather than thousands, rather going through just one and only exchange. We also get to offer a lot of different assets. So most assets are only available on one or two exchanges. So by us aggregating 25, 30 different CeFi, DeFi exchanges, you have access to a magnitude of assets, or you will have access to them once they're added onto FINXFLO, which will be very shortly. And then obviously for the more DeFi, decentralized traders, we also offer staking and liquidity mining through the platform. So what that essentially means is you don't have to move anywhere but through our portal. Everything is very succinct and in one place.
Okay. So, I mean, you can have your, stocks and things and your crypto and DeFi all in one place.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And then since your last interview, FINXFLO has announced several powerhouse liquidity providers coming on board. Coinbase and Binance. I mean, those are two huge names.
Yeah, I mean, it's very exciting, obviously, to be able to add both of the two biggest probably names in crypto today. Obviously, it gives us a much bigger depth of book, so we have a lot more traders, we have a lot more assets, so we're able to offer all of the tokens and all of the actual coins that are on both Coinbase and Binance themselves. But not only this, but we also, because of our institutional relationships, we've negotiated with all of our liquidity partners, including those two, much better terms. So by actually trading through FINXFLO, your pricing will be much better than signing up to those exchanges directly.
Interesting. So, and you mentioned you're talking to other liquidity providers as well?
Yeah, so we're obviously always looking to add to our depth of book and the amount of assets that we're able to offer. So it's something that we continue to actively progress, and we're negotiating with many right now. Okay.
Well, it's interesting. I can tell this industry is maturing because there's these relationships that the liquidity is getting deeper, and it's really kind of coming to fruition.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, many people kind of got concerned across the last week and a half around the violent move. Obviously, there was a lot of money wiped away. However, if you were involved in crypto back in 2017, a move like this is, it's a slight correction. There is nothing really to worry about. There's people taking chips off the table, and obviously they're going to do that. But I foresee for the rest of 2021, I think it's going to be extremely bullish.
Okay, well, we will find out. Thank you so much, James. And come back and talk to us once you get launched, and we'll have an update.
Perfect. Thanks, Jane. Take care.
Petproducts.com. Thousands of products. An Al Simon Wee Pad Inventor Company. Well, we have seen a lot of hacks, ransomware attacks in the U.S. recently. And with me is Alon Gahahi, who is the founder and CEO of GlobeX Data, to talk about that and how secure their product may be able to prevent some of these things. So great to see you again.
Great seeing you, Jane, and hi to everybody who's watching us.
Yeah. So let's just start with, I mean, we've, of course, had SolarWinds. We've had the JBS meat plant attack. I mean, that was Brazil, but they have a huge U.S. operation. The Colonial Pipeline. I mean, there's been a lot. It felt like a lot there week after week. I mean, what's kind of your viewpoint when you see these stories? What are the things that you think about as being a privacy expert?
So all of these hacks, and by the way, the JBS affected North American plants too. All of these hacks are essentially happening because the software systems in the world, the global software system that has been built over the past decade or two has relied a lot more on open source coding. And what's happening now, when you do open source coding, it means that you have a lot of people that can collaborate to improve the service and the code, so they function well. But the problem is that somebody can reverse engineer it. You have hackers that maliciously penetrate a developer group. And essentially, it's like imagine the secret formula of Coca-Cola, right? So, and then you can recreate Coca-Cola or spike Coca-Cola, which is what they do now with hacking. They put malware, they put everything like that. And all of these hacks, they really start with email penetration, because the source of information, the biggest communication style today for businesses is email. So a hacker will get in sometime for several months, watch your email account, trying to get information to see, any kind of thing, from password to your servers all the way to I don't know, how you process meat, or, what do you do for your pipeline? And what's happening is the email system today is dominated by Google and Microsoft. And the problem is that both have been compromised. We've heard about SolarWinds attack with Microsoft. This is the first time that the source code of Microsoft was stolen. And that's a huge thing, because it used to be that if you have your server and you have email exchange from Microsoft and you kept it in your own environment, you were safe. And people used to say, well, I don't want to put my email on the cloud. I'm going to have my own environment. That's no longer the case.
Yeah, well, perfect lead in then. Can you explain to me what Secure can do? And I know your focus is on privacy. So let's talk about how people kind of put privacy, security together. How are they different, and what do you do? What's your solution?
So the first thing that we do is we don't use the big tech platforms. We have our own platform, so we're not running our software on Amazon Web Service, like I would say 98% of the software company, from Signal messaging to Dropbox to whoever. Even LinkedIn is using AWS. So we don't use AWS, Microsoft, or Google. That prevents 99% of the hacking to start. We also never developed in open source coding. We have our own proprietary technology, so we don't have millions of developers out there with our secret sauce that they can reverse engineer. So those two concepts are simple to understand. Don't go on the big platform, don't go on open source coding. On top of that, we store everything in Switzerland. Our sister company, the original company that started this whole development, is Swiss. I'm Swiss myself, and in Switzerland, we have the strictest data privacy laws in the world. The data stores only in Switzerland in our own servers. So that's critical. That eliminates a lot of hack. Now in terms of privacy, what we do, we have Secure Messenger and Secure, which is an email and a messenger app as well. And what we do, we have privacy by design. For example, we have a self-destruct timer on all our messages, and when it does self-destruct, it also destroys in the server in Switzerland. You can send a message to a non-secure user because, we have a special technology that does that. So I'm going to send you an instant message, Jane. You don't have Secure Messenger. You're getting an email to chat with me. You click and you chat with me. We don't require phone numbers. So when you download our app, after you sign up, you will never be prompted to put your phone number in our database. And the phone number is also a huge caveat, because everybody, once you have somebody's phone number, that's it. You can get into their phone, and even worse, you can basically go to their entire address book and hack those people too. And it's like a nuclear chain reaction.
Thank you so much, Alan, for joining us, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you, Jane. Thanks everyone for watching us.
PetProducts.com. Thousands of products. An Al Simon Wee Wee Pad Inventor Company. GreenBox is in the process of launching a token. And with us to explain more about the process is Chairman Ben Arrows of GreenBox. So great to see you again.
Good morning, Jane. Great to see you again.
So tell me about this. You recently made an announcement about the launch of the token. So bring me up to date. Walk me through this opportunity.
Okay, so the token essentially is a media that requires 4 ingredients for a successful launch. You require technology. That technology needs to be certified by an independent evaluation. You need a sponsor bank. You need a national auditor that can provide attestation as to the stability and compliance of the ecosystem. And you need seed capital. So GreenBox is now in possession of all of these 4 ingredients, and this token is about to be launched in the next couple of weeks. Now, every token is $1 in the transactional system of GreenBox, and therefore it works to increase the volume of processing in the transactional ecosystem. It also introduces new profit centers. For example, during the onboarding process, the offboarding process, and a few new exit methods, such as push to cards, the equivalent of an ACH or wire, electronic check, etc. And lastly, our token opens new vertical opportunities for GreenBox, such as money service businesses. Okay. And we'll talk a little bit more about the token later on, and I will give you an exclusive where I named that token on your show for the first time.
Oh, awesome. Okay, I love that. So now you just mentioned the financial services. So you just recently received approval for a deal with Northeast Merchant Services that adds 700 merchant portfolios, right? So what does that mean for GreenBox?
So the primary motivation for us acquiring this bin is to be able to utilize its particular properties, which are not available today, for our business. This bank identification number allows us to do our own risk underwriting and allows us to include new business verticals and much higher volumes. This bin is extremely rare. It's been around for 30 years. And it has some grandfather capabilities. It comes with a processing portfolio of about 700 plus merchants, adding 145 million in annual processing and over $1 million in annual net income for the year. However, this was not the primary motivation. As I said, the primary motivation was to acquire the bin. But that's a nice add-on. And then on top of that, it also comes with a small office building, which we add to our real estate portfolio.
Thank you so much, Ben, for joining us today, and look forward to.
Thank you, Jane. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. PetProducts.com. Thousands of products. An Al Simon Wee Wee Pad Inventor Company. We We've got with us Wayne Root, the CEO of Vegas Winners. And we talked about this a month or so ago, I guess, Wayne, about what you were doing, but a lot has changed since then. So bring us up to date on what's going on with Vegas Winners.
Well, you know, if you ask people who know me, what's the single greatest attribute of Wayne Allen Root, what makes everything work is energy. I have like a vortex around me that's like a hurricane, a tornado. And so many things have happened since I last spoke to you. And I think it's been more like 6 or 8 weeks. But, you know, in my life, a day is like a month, and a month is like a year, and a year is like a decade. And I make things happen. That's what I do. And what we've got at Vegas Winners and VegasWinners.com, our website, and Winners, our publicly traded company, ticker symbol WNRS, is so exciting. I'm like bursting to tell you about it. But I wanted to start by setting the plate for those who didn't see the first interview, or if you did, a little reinforcement. Just long before any of this ever happened, in 1977, when I was 16 years old, the media called me the next Jimmy the Greek and the betting whiz kid. And they said, if sports gambling ever gets legalized, this guy's going to be the king of gambling all over the United States. And here it is legalized all these years later, right? 40-something years later, it's legal. And if you fast forward from 1977 to 1989, 12 years after that interview first appeared, I became Jimmy the Greek's partner on national TV on what was then known as Financial News Network, and within 2 years became CNBC. I was on the precursor to CNBC. And Jimmy the Greek and I were television partners, and he passed the mantle to me. For all intents and purposes today, I am America's Jimmy the Greek. That's what I am. And that's what I envisioned for all these years. That's why we started this company, to take advantage of legal sports gambling. I did this for 30 years, Jane, when it was illegal to bet on sports in 49 states. But I knew something that most people in the media didn't know, that everybody was betting anyway with bookmakers and offshore. So I said I could legally provide the advice and build a nice business and make a lot of money. But it was a niche business. Now it's not niche anymore. There's nothing niche about it. Now there's sports gambling legal all over the United States, billions of dollars being bet. Every state that has legalized it is taking in record revenues every single month. Everything I ever envisioned as a kid and later as an adult is happening. The Wayne Root dream has come true. And the dream is manifested in a company called Winners, Inc., the parent company, and Vegas Winners, the subsidiary. Now let's talk about what new things have happened since I last spoke to you maybe 6 weeks ago.
Yeah. So, I mean, your story's amazing because it's like if you really will it, and it's almost like you had it in your blood and it was destiny. So here you are. So, all right. So tell me about some of the new things that have happened with Las Vegas.
By the way, Jen, I wrote the book, The Power of Relentless. So it is something I do. I do will things to happen. You look at anyone who makes money in the business world, they will things to happen. So I made a list here. I've actually got a list in my hand. There's so many new things that have happened. We start with our main show, Crush House. Then we've got Crush House Cappers, which the main show is all about sports. And soon in fall, it'll be all about football, America's favorite sport. And America's favorite pastime now, sports gambling on football. And then the second show is Crush House Cappers. And it's all about me and a team of sports handicappers literally going over the point spreads each week for America's sports gamblers, of which there are now millions. The third show is called Crush House Legends. And it stars me as the host talking to some of the great athletes in all of sports history. And each week we have a new one on the show to talk about their career. The main show, by the way, stars not just me, but Sean Salisbury, former NFL quarterback, another great guy, and then a whole host of famous people. Comedian Frank Nicotero is the greatest guy and a lifelong gambler, and quite a few other famous athletes. So we've got something amazing happening since I last spoke to you, and these 3 shows are on every single week.
Well, I hope you can find some time to come back and catch us up on everything. So
oh, you know I do. Usually once a month, once every 6 weeks, we'll come back and we'll update you. VegasWinners.com, Vegas Winners, Crush House, and then the stock is Winners, Inc., and the ticker symbol WNRS.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Wayne. And I'm full of energy now talking to you, so it's great.
Thank you, Jane. God bless.
Thanks.
The proceeding was a paid program. The opinions and views expressed do not reflect those of Bloomberg LP, its affiliates, or its employees.
All around the world, tech companies are innovating and driving returns for investors. At Our Crowd, we analyze companies across the global private market, selecting those with the greatest growth potential, then bring them to you. From personalized medicine to cybersecurity to robotics, quantum computing, and more. Our Crowd's accredited investors have already invested over $1 billion in growing tech companies. Join the fastest growing venture capital investment community at ourcrowd.com.
People remaining on this earth. You saw those kinds of prophecies during the late 70s, what people refer to as the malaise period. You saw people saying that the Cold War was over and Japan had won. It's a recurring theme in American history that people prophesy doom, and then those prophecies are denied by actions that are being taken.
Larry, this may have been Infrastructure Week, but antitrust is a near runner-up. As a practical matter, we had 5 bills get through the Judiciary Committee about fundamentally redoing our antitrust laws to really go after, I think it's fair to say, big tech to a large degree. We also have a new chair of the CFTC, Lena Khan, who has made a career thus far of really challenging some of the big tech and more fundamentally the antitrust approach, the overall approach to the question. What do you make of this? Do we need to be rethinking our antitrust approach in light of what's happened with big tech?
I'm halfway with the critics. A new economy needs new thinking and new approaches. The old concepts weren't designed with issues like platform companies in mind. But I part company completely with the legal scholars, scholars who, frankly, in many cases are not very familiar with economic reasoning in its intricacy, the people who call themselves neo-Brandeisians and want to go back to what Justice Brandeis said in 1916. Ultimately, an efficient economy that serves consumers well is the right criteria for antitrust policy. Any attempt to change the goal of antitrust policy to be protecting competitors rather than protecting competition, I believe will do grave damage to the American economy. So yes, we need new approaches, possibly new laws, but they need to be ultimately grounded in an economic approach that is based on having a more functional and efficient economy. And the idea that big is bad per se, or the idea that big should be broken up just so that smaller companies have a better chance to compete even when they are less efficient. You read the traditional antitrust decisions of the 1960s, and they are a horror show in terms of their economic illiteracy, where companies make efforts to defend themselves by saying that they're inefficient and therefore they're not going to win out over competitors in competition. That is the way to American failure.
So, Larry, let's conclude with a quick round of summer says here. Number one, we had Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, go up on Capitol Hill. She was testifying on her budget, actually, and she said she's fairly confident that inflation will be back down under 5% by the end of the year. What was your reaction?
gosh, Dave, that anybody was talking about 5% would have been inconceivable 3 or 4 months ago, when the consensus was in a completely different place. My guess is that at the end of the year, inflation will, for this year, come out pretty close to 5%. And it would surprise me if we had 5% inflation with no effect on inflation expectations. It could go either way with respect to 5%. I'd be happy to take the bet on over at 4.5%. But I think the real comment is that it was only 3 weeks ago when acknowledgments that inflation would reach 3% this year were treated as significantly newsworthy. So this is in line with what I have to say I have predicted on your show almost every week, that inflation is going to surprise on the high side relative to expectations, and I'm afraid that continues to be my view.
So, Larry, while we're on the second half, looking at the second half of the year, let's talk about markets overall. What are you expecting? More turbulence, less turbulence?
I think more. The crisis, in some ways, that I grew up with was the Japanese bubble in the late 1980s. And what was interesting was that there were a lot of people who were anxious about the Japanese market, and then it survived and it kept going and kept rising, and then more people got anxious and it grew. And at a certain point, most of the anxious had thrown in the towel, and that's when we had really an epic financial collapse in Japan. And Japan's market isn't anywhere near back to where it was 30 years ago. I don't think we're going to get anything like that in the United States. But I think there's a point there when warriors have been disproved a few times and people are saying we're in a new era. That's when you need to be very careful. So my guess is we'll see higher rates over the next 6 months in the second half of the year. And with those higher rates, there'll probably be more turbulence.
And finally, our final summer says here, Larry, what about the labor markets? Because some people are saying, come October, come September, we're going to fix the labor markets because people will come back off the sidelines. They'll fill those jobs. We won't have the same problem. What do you expect?
Look, we're going to see more supply as benefits wear out, as kids go back to school. But we're also going to see more demand as the economy surges through the summer and continues to open up. I'm not sure which way that balance is going to change. My guess is you're still going to have considerable inflationary pressure in labor markets for quite some time, and that's part of why I'm nervous about the inflation picture. I think that here's maybe a thought to conclude on. Policymakers say there's transient inflation. They are obviously right. But inflation right now is running at 6%. Nobody thinks that we've got that ingrained. The question is whether most of the inflation is transient, or whether transient inflation means we're going to come off that 6%, but still be at too high a level. That's where my money would be.
Okay, thank you once again to Larry Summers, our special contributor, and of course, he's a professor at Harvard. Coming up, one more thought on bringing back New York, the heart of Wall Street. This is Wall Street Week on Bloomberg.
Data is reality. If you face it, you can understand it. Then you can do something about it. At Bloomberg, we're the realists who see it as it is, and then get to work with our partners, tackling the biggest threats from climate change. Face the data. Change the world.
What is payment for order flow? The money a market maker pays to your broker to trade with your order at the price he decides. Your broker will charge you no commissions and leave you no choice. At Interactive Brokers, you do have a choice. You can choose to pay no commissions, just like at other brokers, or you can pay a small commission and IBKR will try to match you up with an institutional order at a better price.
Say hello to the new athleisure. Sleek design, cloud level comfort, with athletic technology and Italian leather. They're game for anything. Are you? Free shipping, free returns, 365-day guarantee. Get comfortable at wolfendshepherd.com.
Finally, one more thought. And this one hits close to home. New York is, after all, the home of Wall Street, that location in lower Manhattan named for a wall the Dutch built in the 17th century to keep out the British and pirates. And let's be frank, I'm not sure how successful they were on either of those. New York has always been centered in business and in commerce. It's always been open to the world, particularly the commercial world. And so when the pandemic hit and commerce and imports, whether of goods or of tourists, shut down overnight, New York was hit particularly hard.
We care about the things that most citizens care about: public safety, education, and the ability of the city to attract jobs and young people.
This week, New York took an important step toward coming back as it gathered at the polls for the first time since the pandemic.
An election as we are coming out of COVID.